You were not born numb. The world carved silence into your bones. Not with swords, but with shadows. They mistook your quiet for weakness. They mocked your absence, never sensing the storm you've buried beneath skin and restraint. But silence is not surrender. It is strategy. You've been patient, watching from the fringes, a wolf forced into exile. They do not know you are building fire in the frost. You have no need for applause. You crave rebirth. The man who returns from the dead doesn't seek revenge. He becomes it. So listen now, not with your ears, but with your scars. Because this path is not about being liked. It's about becoming unreadable, unshakable, untouchable. Welcome to the shadow. Welcome to your awakening. You wear a mask. Every man does. Some wear it like armor, polished, bulletproof, proudly displayed. Others, like you, barely notice it's there anymore. It's fused to your face, molded by years of silence, sacrifice, and pretending. But here's the truth. No one dares whisper in the dark. You didn't put it on to hide. You put it on to survive. From the moment you were told, be strong, don't cry, don't feel, you began to vanish. Piece by piece, the real you was dismantled, not destroyed, just buried, under performance, under posturing, under 1,000 forced smiles. You became what the world told you to be, and the world wasn't even watching. All your sacrifices, the approval you chased, the applause you never heard, the love you tried to earn by becoming invisible, that's the lie, that if you just played the role well enough, they'd finally see you, respect you, want you. But the more perfectly you performed, the more you disappeared. You built the perfect image, stoic, charming, competent. You said the right things. You wore the right face. And now you can't remember the last time you told the truth about who you are. Because when you wear the mask long enough, you forget there ever was a face beneath it. It feels safe, doesn't it? This emotional armor, this quiet detachment. No one can hurt the man they don't know. But no one can love him either. You can conquer rooms, lead teams, destroy opponents. But can you sit with yourself, without noise, without validation? Can you stand naked before the mirror, without crumbling? The mask whispers, keep performing. It fears silence, because in silence, truth returns. And the truth is you're tired, not physically, existentially, tired of being fine. Tired of carrying everyone else's expectations. Tired of pretending strength when your soul's been bleeding for years. You buried the wild man long ago. The one with fire in his chest and chaos in his heart. The one who felt. The one who raged, dreamed, questioned. The one who wasn't tame. He scared them, so you put him down. But his bones still rattle beneath your skin. Waiting, watching, wondering when you'll stop pretending and start remembering. This is the prison. The man they love isn't real, and the man who's real has never been seen. Your silence, it's not confusion, it's control. You don't explain yourself, because there's nothing left to explain. Let them misunderstand. Let them talk. Let them cling to the version of you that never existed. Because mastery begins where performance ends. It's not in being liked. It's not in being followed. It's in being feared by the weakness you once called safety. Every time you speak the truth, a piece of the mask falls away. Every time you say no, without apology, it cracks. Every time you walk away from what isn't yours, you return to yourself. The world doesn't need another perfect man. It needs a dangerous one, with edges, with silence, with sovereignty. A man who's not owned by image. A man who doesn't beg to be understood. A man who's free enough to be hated, and still walks tall. And if they call that arrogance, so be it. Better to be hated for your truth, than loved for your disguise. The mask you wear is not protection. It's your prison. And you were born for war, not theater. You've tried being soft. You've tried being liked. And where did it lead you? To compromise, to hesitation, to watered-down choices and silent self-betrayals. You bent your instincts to fit into rooms that didn't respect your presence. You shrank to keep peace, smiled to stay safe, said yes when every bone in your body screamed no, and still, it wasn't enough. Because the world doesn't reward obedience. It feeds on it. You weren't born for obedience. You were born for war. There is a reason you feel that pulse in your chest, that cold heat under the surface. It's not weakness. It's the wolf, caged, sedated, watching. He's been there all along, staring from the dark corners of your soul. Not angry, just waiting. Waiting for the moment you stop apologizing for being powerful. This isn't about rage. It's not about being loud. It's about reclaiming the part of you that never needed approval to move. The wolf does not ask permission to breathe. He does not flinch at judgment. He does not fold for comfort. He observes, calculates, waits. Stillness is not fear. It is precision. The world sees stillness and assumes softness, but softness flinches. The wolf doesn't, because he knows motion is often a mistake. Flinching reveals weakness. Overreaction costs everything. Prey flinches. Predators don't. You've been taught to over-explain, over-apologize, over-justify, and it's cost you your edge. The wolf doesn't overthink. He trusts the tension in the air. He trusts the silence between steps. He trusts himself. That's what you've forgotten. Not how to be good, but how to be dangerous. A man must be dangerous, not to harm, but to hold ground, to say no without a smile, to walk away without drama, to live in a way that commands respect without begging for it. You want peace? Become the kind of man who chooses not to strike, not the kind who can't. Because if you've never had to hold back the blade, you've never really had control. The wolf isn't loved, he's respected. He's not loud, he's felt. His presence is not permission, it's a reminder. I don't need you to understand me to move. There is a version of you that doesn't flinch. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't fear distance. He doesn't explain himself to people who've never earned the right to question him. He simply is. That version of you lives in discipline, in silence, in decisions that don't need applause to feel right. He has stared into storms and walked through fires, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. And now, he doesn't run from chaos. He uses it. Stillness in chaos, focus in noise, power in restraint. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering what you were before the world softened you. There's a reason you feel empty after people pleasing. A reason you feel tension in fake conversations. A reason you'd rather be alone than surrounded by shallow. You were never meant to be docile. You were born with teeth, not to destroy, but to defend what matters. You don't need more permission. You need more solitude, more stillness, more control. The kind of control that terrifies those who can't command themselves. Because the man who doesn't flinch can't be moved. They mistake your silence for absence. They think if you're quiet, you're unsure, weak, passive. But that's their flaw, not yours. Because silence is strategy. It's the weapon that leaves no fingerprints. The shadow that moves without being seen. The cold breath just before the storm. You've seen what happens when men overexpose themselves. They speak too soon, reveal too much, bleed where no one asked them to bleed, and then wonder why they're not respected. But power doesn't announce itself. It watches, it withholds, it waits. He who speaks least sees most. He who reveals nothing rules everything. Because when you say little, people project much. They fill in the silence with their own fear, their own guilt, their own insecurity. They unravel without you ever lifting a finger. And that is control. But most can't stomach the stillness. They fidget, overshare, laugh too loudly in empty rooms, desperate to be understood, to be liked, to be seen. You don't need that anymore. You've learned that validation is bait, that speaking just to be heard is noise, not signal, and that the man who controls his tongue controls the room. The quietest one always feels the heaviest, because silence demands something the world has forgotten. Presence, not performance, not explanation, not noise. Still present, watching. And in that stillness, there's power, but also peace. The kind of peace that can't be faked. Because it comes from knowing who you are without needing to prove it. They can call you cold, detached, guarded. Let them scream into the silence trying to provoke something you refuse to give. Let them swing wildly into the void, hoping you'll flinch. You won't, because silence is not fear. It's precision. It's choosing not to be reactive. Not because you can't react, but because you've outgrown the need to. That's real dominance. To hear the insult and say nothing. To see the chaos and stay still. To walk away without leaving a trail of words behind. They don't know what you're thinking, and that terrifies them. Because unpredictability is a form of power. Mystery is leverage, and silence, it's the throne upon which restraint sits like a king. There was a time when you wanted to be understood. Now you prefer being misunderstood. Because the more they misunderstand you, the more control you keep. No explanations, no clarifications, no weakness disguised as connection. Let them wonder. Let them obsess. Let your silence be a mirror, so they see themselves unravel. This world doesn't need more voices, it needs more weight. And weight is born from discipline, from knowing when to speak and when to disappear. You don't need the last word. You don't need the spotlight. You don't need their agreement. You only need one thing: command over yourself. That is the final war. And when a man wins it, he doesn't have to raise his voice again. He just exists, and the world listens, because silence never begs, it reigns. There is no safety in being understood, because once they understand you, they can use you, predict you, exploit you. You become readable, and what's readable is destroyable. They'll map your patterns, track your tells, learn what makes you blink, breathe, break. But what they cannot decode, they cannot dismantle. This is the law. In a world built on noise, you must become unreadable. A shadow among signals. A blank page in a room full of scripts. Not invisible, just uncapturable. They need you to explain, to show your hand, to make them comfortable. Don't keep them guessing. Let them project. Let them assume. Let them play chess with a ghost. Because the most powerful move you'll ever make is not letting them see the board at all. This isn't about deception. It's about discretion, about mastering ambiguity, where your presence is felt, but your motives are not, where they feel your weight, but never your plan. You don't need to be loud to be lethal. You don't need to be known to be remembered. You don't need to be figured out to dominate. Be the man who disappears before they aim. The man whose name is spoken with respect, but whose next move is never predicted. In war, the most dangerous soldier isn't the one who charges first. It's the one you never saw coming. The one who waited, studied, vanished into the terrain, and struck when it mattered. Can you be that man? Can you resist the urge to be understood, to be seen fully, to be explained? Because that's the trap. To reveal enough to feel known, but just enough to be controlled. You don't owe them your essence. Only your silence, only your outcomes. Let them see the result, not the blueprint. Be seen enough to be feared, but not enough to be figured out. They ask, "What do you think?" You answer, "We'll see." They ask, "Where are you going?" You say, "Forward." Every word measured, every look weighted, every step deliberate. Unreadability isn't distance, it's discipline. It's the decision to be unshakable in a world that begs you to explain yourself at every turn. It's rejecting the addiction to being known, and choosing instead to be respected. The more you say, the more they expect. The more they expect, the more they control. Speak less, do more, leave room for doubt. Let them wonder. Confusion is a weapon when you know how to wield it. They will try to place you, label you, box you, but a man without edges can't be cornered. No footprints, no fingerprints, just forward motion. Do you understand the power in that? In not reacting, in not responding, in not being reached. The storm doesn't explain itself. The wolf doesn't narrate his next move. The king doesn't shout his strategy across the board. He just moves, with force, with timing, with silence. So hold the line, protect your presence, be the one they remember, but never fully grasp, because the ones they can't figure out are the ones they never forget. You think you're alone. You think the silence means something's wrong, that the cold is punishment, that the distance means you've lost. But what if I told you, you're exactly where you're meant to be? This isn't exile, it's elevation. They told you the fire made you strong, but they never told you about the winter, the silence, the stillness, the brutal clarity that only comes when the noise dies, and all that's left is you. No applause, no affirmation, no one checking in, just the echo of your own breath in the empty halls of your mind. You are not weak. You are repressed. And there's a difference. Because what's buried isn't gone. It's just waiting. Waiting behind the smile, behind the polite nod, behind the version of you they trained, shaped, sanitized. You learned early that strength is dangerous, that fire burns, that if you wanted to be accepted, you had to dim. So you caged your rage. You silenced your power. You amputated parts of yourself to fit in a world that rewards compliance. And for what? For peace, for love, for validation so fragile it vanishes the moment you stop performing. You think you're broken. You're not. You're bound, tied down by decades of emotional obedience, trained to flinch at your own instincts, taught that control means suppression, when in truth, control is integration. There's a beast in you, not the mindless one they warned you about, but the strategic one, the one with claws, but the discipline to sheath them, the one who doesn't destroy, but defends, not chaos, but command. You buried him every time you swallowed your truth, every time you apologized for your edge, every time you traded your instincts for approval. They told you to be gentle, but they didn't mean balanced. They meant harmless, and you agreed, not out of weakness, but out of survival. But here's the truth, no one dares say. The parts you suppress don't disappear. They rot, they fester, they whisper from the corners of your mind, waiting to be remembered, not to take over, but to fortify. The shadow self, your anger, your desire, your ambition, your raw intensity, it's not the enemy, it's the sword, and you've been trying to win a war with bare hands. You think you're calm, but you're numb. You think you've healed, but you've just forgotten how to feel. And you wonder why your strength feels hollow, why your confidence disappears when it's tested, why the fire doesn't burn like it used to. Because you buried the fuel, the very parts that made you dangerous. You treated them like a disease. But a man without shadow is a man without substance, without depth, without spine. You don't become powerful by being good. You become powerful by being whole. By looking your darkness in the eye and saying, "You're mine now. Let's move." This isn't about losing control. It's about choosing control, with both hands on the wheel, not flinching when the anger rises, but listening, not running from the fire, but learning to wield it. You've spent years editing yourself. Now it's time to reclaim yourself, piece by piece, edge by edge. Speak the truth you've hidden. Feel what you've suppressed. Become the man who doesn't fear his own shadow, but leads with it. Let it stand behind your eyes. Let it anchor your posture. Let it walk beside you, not as a monster, but as a guardian. The world will call it dangerous. Let them, because the most dangerous man is the one who's made peace with his darkness and wields it without apology. You're not broken. You're bound. Cut the rope. They told you to feel nothing, to kill the emotion, to stay numb, cold, stoic. But that's not power. That's paralysis. You were never meant to be emotionless. You were meant to wield it, like a blade, like fire. Not flailing, but focused. The problem isn't that you feel too much. It's that you never learned what to do with it. So the rage exploded when it should have been quiet. The love poured out where it wasn't respected. The grief showed up in jokes, in distractions, in silence too heavy to carry. But emotion, it's not weakness, it's ammunition. If you know how to channel it, filter it through logic, fuse it to purpose, because untrained emotion destroys, but trained emotion conquers. You don't need to cry in public to be real. You don't need to scream to be feared. You don't need to break to be authentic. Men don't fall because they're weak. They fall because they're hollow. No structure, no discipline, no code, just reaction, just impulse, just chasing the next high and calling it freedom. But freedom without order is collapse, and a man without structure is a ruin waiting to happen. You've seen it, you've lived it. That feeling of drifting, waking up with no weight, no center, no walls to hold your purpose in place. You want power, Build the architecture. Not with noise, not with hype, but with ritual. Because motivation dies. Emotions shift, but systems sustain. You will return. But not as the man who left. Not as the one who begged for answers. Not as the one who flinched when he was misunderstood. Not as the one who searched for himself in mirrors built by other people's expectations. The man who enters the void is not the same as the one who walks back out. Because in the void, everything dies. The noise, the lies, the parts of you that perform just to be accepted. There is no applause there, no echo, no map, just a silence. So deep it exposes every illusion you ever built around who you thought you were. And that silence becomes your teacher. It doesn't yell, it doesn't comfort, it dismantles. Relentlessly, precisely. You don't rise from the void, motivated. You rise mutated. Your eyes colder, your presence heavier. Not because you hate the world, but because you see it now, for what it is, and more importantly, for what it isn't. There's no more chasing, no more reacting, no more broadcasting your worth, just to be validated by the blind. The man who comes back from the void no longer needs revenge. He is the consequence. He no longer argues. He no longer pleads. He no longer explains. Because power doesn't announce itself. It arrives. Quiet, grounded, inevitable. You used to speak just to be heard. Now you speak only to cut. You used to move for approval. Now you move in silence. And the ground shifts around you. Let them wonder what changed. Let them try to read you, reach you, resurrect the version of you that made them comfortable. You won't flinch, because the void stripped that man from your bones, burned him, buried him, replaced him with something sharper, something colder, something true. You no longer fear solitude. You require it. You no longer fear misunderstanding. You weaponize it. You no longer seek the light. You become the shadow that moves through it, untouched. This isn't a comeback. This is a return. But with new rules, rules that don't bend for emotion, noise, or weakness. You return unreadable. Not because you're hiding, but because you've outgrown the need to be seen. They will say you've changed, but change implies permission. This isn't that. This is replacement. Version 1 is gone. Version 2 doesn't need to speak. There is no slogan, no declaration, no post, because the most dangerous transformation is the one you don't see coming. You don't announce the new you. You become him. Let your presence make the noise. Let your silence bend the air. Let your stillness confuse the world that only understands chaos. This is not the beginning. This is the aftermath. You are the storm. You are the weapon. You are the warning that never comes. And from this moment forward, you never explain yourself again.